Hello, everyone. Good evening and a happy new year to you. We're so terribly sorry. We're behind the time we kind of scheduled for this live. It's been hectic here at the back end. So we're happy to welcome you into the new year 2021. And it is my pleasure to have you on the program today. We're in a new year, and as always, we're expecting new things, resolutions to happen. But that seems not to be the case in Cameroon, unfortunately. We've seen very little or nothing happening since 2016. We seem to be revolving on the same axis, but for the first time in Cameroon, the regional elections held, boycotted by many opposition parties. And so we ask, will the regional councillors change the country's dynamic, or is it just another white elephant project? Because of the enormity of the topics to look at today, I will not be alone. So I will be joined by yours truly, Mimi Mefo, who will be helping us as we interview our guest today. So, hello, Bibi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to have you. Thank you for having me today. Like you said, we have a lot to talk about, and we sincerely apologize for starting way behind time. It's because of circumstances beyond our control. But we do promise that we are going to meet up to that, and we sincerely apologize, like I said earlier. Now, 87-year-old President Paul Biya once again has addressed Cameroonians in his traditional New Year speech that was on the 31st of December 2020. He covered a lot of issues, economy, the political situation in Cameroon, health, and so many other topics as well. And his speech, as usual, was described as déjà vu, which means that he said nothing new according to so many analysts. Do not take that from me. We are going to be having a panelist, a group of experts. So many people will come and watch discuss this and more. But before we start, Pamela, I just want to find out from you how you're feeling today. It is Sunday, the first Sunday in the year 2021. How are you doing?
Well, it doesn't feel like a new year particularly, does it? Because all the events from 2020 are following us, but we are intent to make it a better year, and we intend to be positive about this, regardless of any hurdle that comes our way. We intend to battle with it.
So glad to hear that. Before we delve in, it's time we introduce all our guests tonight to you. It's a rich panel. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to have everybody, Pamela, unfortunately.
Well, it's rather sad, isn't it? But anyhow, we're grateful for those who have been able to come forward, very intelligent individuals, understanding large amount of expertise, and I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say. What about you?
Exactly. We've got experts across the board. Like we said earlier, we'll be discussing economy, security, the political situation in Cameroon. We'll be talking about the socio-political crisis, which is now a civil war. Others would say it's a conflict. Others would call it otherwise a humanitarian crisis in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. We would also be talking about the regional council election that took place just days ago, a few weeks. That was in the month of December last month. And to join us on the panel today, we have Emmanuel, who is the defense chairman of the Amazonian Defense Forces, AGF under the Agbor. He's one of the persons who will be joining us tonight. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Mimi. I prefer to go by my name, Capo Daniel. My former names are Ndong Emmanuel, and it's nice to join this platform and to seeing you. I remember when you were detained, we campaigned so hard for your release, and it's wonderful to see you doing what you do best. And I'm happy to be on this platform.
Once more, thank you so much for joining us. Now we also have Barrister Ashu Emmanuel, who is a senior barrister at law. He's joining us from the economic capital Douala of Cameroon. Thank you, Barrister. Welcome on board.
Thank you, Mimi Mefo, senior barrister.
Senior barrister, of course, I said
senior barrister. That is 38 years. Yeah, it's a pleasure being with you for the first time on this media. I hope we are going to have interesting discussions. Well, like I don't know whether that's her name, Bonkiyong.
Oh, thank you. You pronounced it perfectly. Very few people do that on the first attempt.
like she said, many things don't seem to be moving in Cameroon, but at least we have so many things to talk about. I hope you enjoyed the show.
Right. We have two more guests on the show tonight.
Yes, indeed, we do. So we have got Richard Four, who has been very instrumental in the Southern Cameroon struggle, especially recent one. So he's the moderator for the West Cameroon Association think tank, and he was quite instrumental in organizing the meeting at the House of Commons in the UK, where the issues in Southern Cameroons were discussed in 2017. So let's welcome to on the platform Mr. Richard Four.
Hello, Pamela. Hello, Mimi. Thank you, and all the panelists, Capo Daniel and Senior Barrister Agbor Ashu. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to an enriching exchange amongst us because Mimi Mefo, your platform is fantastic because it enables this exchange of views that should inform our people to be able to take well-informed decisions on what we do going forward. So thank you very much, and I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Danfor. And on the topic of decentralization, we were very lucky to get an expert who is no other than Dr. Tata Sunjo. He is a governance and policy fellow at the Nkafu Policy Institute, which sits in the Dennis and Lenora Foresha Foundation. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Sunjo. Oh, I think Dr. Sunjo might be having, oh, let's see. Dr. Sunjo, can you hear us? I'm not sure if Dr. Sunjo can hear us, but we can see him.
Pamela, I can get you very well.
Marvelous. So we can all see you too. So that's great.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Dr. Sunjo, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Perfectly, we can hear you. Oh dear. So Dr. Sunjo there is having some technical issues. We'll bring him back on board when those are sorted. So for now, we will carry on because we know that you've all been waiting anxiously for us to get on with the discussions of today. So we're going to begin by looking into the Anglophone crisis, which has been one that has been bothering us for the last 4 years. And as we have an able panelist here that we can go through, we will start with Capo Daniel, who is the Deputy Defense Chairman of the Ambazonia Forces. And so to you, I don't know if I should call you Mr. Capo or Mr. Daniel. So the Anglophone crisis has been going on, and let's start with the money. So there have been talks of mismanagement of funds with regards to the fight, and we've heard of a lot about my trip to the Boya debacle. But we also want to hear what the ADF has been doing with the money that people have raised for the ADF fight. I mean, we don't seem to get any reports on how the money is spent, what it's used for, because people clearly are looking to see results on the ground for the money that they're putting in. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And first of all, I would just want to say, in the spirit of Black Lives Matter, which is a global movement about the dignity of Black men, I would want to just make some small correction with what you have described as the Anglophone crisis. I am from the British Southern Cameroons that we prefer to call today Ambazonia. And I am not an Anglophone, and I'm an indigenous son of the soil, and we prefer to call our territory the Ambazonia. This is a territory that it was a category B territory. It was a sovereign territory, and what we are finding ourselves today is a liberation war fighting to complete the decolonization of that territory. So this is a war for decolonization. This is a liberation war. We are fighting for our independence like many other territories have fought for their independence. Regarding the management of finances within the Ambazonian liberation struggle, I think it is a very, very tough one. But I'm a deputy defense chief, of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, which have a very robust accountability system. And because this is a very sensitive area, we do not really account publicly, but I think our forces on the ground are well equipped, and we do not have any issues concerning corruptions. There have been some news with the splinter faction of the Ayok Tabi IG group, but I really cannot say much about that. And we are building very strong institutions that are going to serve like the basis, the nursery for an open society in Ambazonia. You can remember that the Southern Cameroons used to be one of the first democracy we have in Africa, with a very good accountability system in place, and our group being the biggest group on the ground without any problem. I think it speaks for itself. We are very, very much accountable to our donors, and there have been zero complaint regarding management of finances. So usually, for example, me as a deputy defense chief, when I want to do requisition order, I have to go through a lot of bureaucracy to get finances for projects that I'm working on, to fund projects that have been designated to my office. So we do not really have a financial accountability issue, because we have a whole board of financial advisors, and we also have an independent audit commission within the governing council that oversees the dispensation of finances within the organizations that I serve my country through.
So, Mr. Emmanuel, I want to find out from you. You said that there's nobody has come up with complaints. You've been doing everything at the level of the Agbor to ensure that there's transparency. You've had a lot of different, about 5 or 6 that I know about, different projects that you have called to contribute. Like, we know about the issues, about the Amazonian themes, we know about the takeover funds, and so many others. So why is there no public financial transparency, given that most of those who are contributing these funds are from the public? They are the people out there.
Yeah, we do have sometimes our forces, we do display weapons that have been purchased. And because we are in the middle of a war, you don't expect us to come and account for the purchase of materials, how much it costs, and give accounts like we are in an open society when we have an enemy that is very much sophisticated than us. So those are very sensitive issues that have national security implications. So I think our action speaks for itself. We are highly funded by the general public, and we do have little complaint regarding accountability, because the public trusts our system of accountability. Our financial department is independent from the executive branch of the governing council and from the officials that can make requisition order. So we do not have such problem of public accountability with our people, with our constituency. And if we did have such complaints, they will probably come through my office, because I'm a frontline communicator for the governing council as well as the Ambazonia Defense Forces. So we have not had any complaint of misappropriation of funds. Yes, we have suffered some losses.
You would only come public when you have some complaints. Is that what you're saying? Because unfortunately, we couldn't have Chris Anu, because he announced on the platform that he was going to be on the panel. Because of 1 or 2 reasons that we cannot explain properly, he couldn't be part of today's program. We would have loved him to be here, because there's always this back and forth discussion between the Dr. Sako-led IG and members of the Agbor as to how funds have been managed, especially my Chitoboy. And you yourself have said that it's a very, very sensitive topic, but this is a topic that is out there. Everybody talks about it on a daily basis. But you say people are not complaining as far as the funds that you've been contributing or receiving are concerned. Tell us why should your own situation be different?
I think with the case of the splinter group of the IG group of Siseko Ayok Tabi, because I think the group of ANU is a splinter group with very little legal ground in terms of the constitution of the IG, and there had been a constituent assembly in America where Sako was indicted for misappropriation and embezzlement of funds. And but that faction, I think, is a dwindling faction within the revolution, and should not really bother Ambazonians so much. I think the term in terms of contribution of funds to that particular splinter group, it have dwindled with time. And the Ambazonian Defense Forces, if you can see in terms of the purchase of our materials, the display of our materials on the ground, and the type of huge weight we are carrying, you look at the project like the September 1st takeover attempt in Bamenda, you would see huge cache of weapons that were used that will account for our expenditure. But in terms for complaints, I think it is limited to this splinter group, and it is not something that is widespread. Unfortunately, bad news travel fast, so this type of news catch the headlines. But I can assure you that most of the officials of the governing council, as well as the Ambazonian Defense Forces, are people that are working and are working class people, and we have a robust system of accountability. Never have we had any scandal or issue raised in public in any significant way concerning accountability. We are very, very much accountable. And I think our actions on the ground, our material and our weaponry on the ground can speak better for the purchases we have done.
Okay, let's take this question to Barrister Agbor Ashu, who has very strong views about what has been going on in terms of this fighting, or like I would be corrected if I said crisis is wrong, it has to be a war. I just think that semantics, so to each their own terminology that you prefer to use. So Barrister Agbor Ashu, our able senior barrister. So we have Capo Daniel here saying that ADF has done a brilliant job on the ground and therefore is justified in the monies that have been fundraised for that purpose. Do you agree that there are results on the ground in terms of given how much money we hear has been fundraised for these activities?
Well, thank you. You see, being somebody who is out of the movement, I cannot authoritatively state that they are using their monies correctly or not. But if you look at the results that we are getting from the field, I think they are doing a good job. They are doing quite a good job because you see, like you were saying, there is you actually see that their forces are putting up a strong base on the field and really disturbing the army. So I think if they were not using the money properly, then their forces will not put up a strong face. So I think somewhere along the line he has a point. He may be correct. But I cannot verify that because I'm not part of them. But I see that on the field, ADF is giving the army a lot of trouble, and well, they cannot give trouble if the boys don't have weapons. And we see
what trouble are they giving the army? What trouble are they giving the army?
Wonderful. They're killing soldiers every day. Are you asking me what trouble? We see the trouble they're causing. I mean, when we see their videos, they say they're blown up military trucks, they're and all that. Well, you see the activity. Except some person will tell me that what we are seeing is not true. I see videos of ADF claiming to have blown up military trucks, killed soldiers, and carried out military activities. So I think they are present in the field, and they cannot be present in the field if they have not got the weapons. So I think somehow Mr. Capo may have some good reason to say what he said.
So, Mr. Capo Emmanuel, sorry, Mr. Capo Daniel, we want to hear from your own mouth. Barrister Ashu holds that it's military trucks that you've been blowing, which there are very little reports about in the press, unless it's WhatsApp press that we haven't seen when people are killed in any region in any of the Anglophone regions. We hear of it. So, with every clear indication, you believe that you're doing something on the ground that we are not tangibly seeing or seeing it being reported. So, apart from blowing up vehicles, what exactly have you done that has helped Anglophones in this fight?
On the contrary, I think last week the CRTV, which is the official channel of the Cameroon government, had done a program where their general visited over 1,000 troops that were injured in Douala Hospital. And I think that the Cameroon government have been hiding their losses on the battlefield, recently they had announced that over 800 troops were missing in action. So we do know for sure that they have been hiding their corpses, sometimes airlifting them to Douala and Chang. We also have informants from the mortuary that will usually give us information about such casualties. But we are very sure of our numbers that we have been very, very active on the ground in terms of carrying out operations, surgical operation. Yesterday we had a big operation in Beme, in Manu Division. That was very, very successful. I think they lost about 4 soldiers. So many of the time, La République du Cameroon do not publicly account about their losses on the battlefield, I think because of propaganda purposes. But I think they have displayed the numbers on their national TV when the general visited the Douala hospital with more than 1,000 handicapped troops. So you would want to ask them when did those incidents happen? Because if you look at the reports for the past year, they have not reported such huge casualties of incidents, but the numbers they have shown on their national TV, troops that have suffered from this war. So they are hiding their casualties.
Now, Mr. Capo Daniel, ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming back with a different background because initially I could see many of you people there are telling me you are not getting me. My sound was not the best. So thank you so much for that. I have another question for you, Mr. Capo Daniel. At the beginning of the revolution, it started in 2016. We had this sympathy, this overwhelming sympathy from the people on ground zero in the restive northwest and the southwest regions of the country. But there's been this gradual disengagement in several communities. We've reported such cases on several occasions on our platform here on Mimime for Info. Can you tell me exactly what happened?
I think, first of all, there is a misunderstanding about the whole issue concerning the beginning of the revolution, as when it concerns the fight for the liberation or the decolonization of the Southern Cameroon territory and Bazonia. These have been going on for close to 60 years. So we have been fighting to be decolonized for a very long time, even with this union that was imposed upon us by the Republic of Cameroon. We have never really settled with them, and we have never really accepted this situation. There have always been resistance. And on the 31st of December, we just celebrated the first declaration of our independence by Justice Ebong Frederick. That happened in 1999. What do you call revolution? I think you are talking about the Ambazonia Rising, where the Cameroon government banned the consortium, which triggered the war for our liberation. For over 60 years, we have been doing campaigning. Agbor have been involved. Many activists have been involved to organize and represent the interests of our people to be decolonized in the United Nations, in the United States, and in the African Union. So the Ambazonia Rising that triggered the war is what you are probably talking about. And we think that it is quite popular today more than ever before. Our general population have been subjected to tremendous pressure from the Cameroon military to suppress their view and to make sure that they are unable to express this view. But according to Cardinal Tumi's survey, more than 90% of our people still want independence. And if you look at the effectiveness of the Independent Day Ghost Town that is being carried out throughout our national territory, all our people basically are standing up for independence under tremendous pressure from the Cameroon military that have banned our nationalism, that have banned free speech from our people to be able to express themselves. And they are trying to facilitate some sabotage and some propaganda campaign with their imposed election on our territory. But for the vast majority of our people, they stand tall to demand for independence. Every Monday, you can see the whole territory shut down voluntarily for people demanding for independence. And we do not think that we have dwindled. We think that we have just become more sophisticated and adapted to this occupation by the Republic of Cameroon.
Mr. Capo Daniel, I'll come to you with specific examples. So we can see so many people reacting, and I assure you that if your comments are constructive enough, we are going to be posting them to Mr. Capo Daniel, who is on board here today. I would go to Mr. Richard Ford to find out from you. The crisis, when it started, we just heard from Mr. Capo Daniel what he said. When it started to the point where we find ourselves today, do you think that this is where the people would have loved to find themselves in? This is where the people would have loved to be as far as the Anglophone crisis, the conflict is concerned?
Well, Mimi, thank you for that question. The simple answer is no. But before I make my remarks, let me just say the following. There seems to be a lot of confusion in our movement because I still see people referring to others as federalists, confederalists, independents, whatever aliases they choose. Let me make this very clear because our people still seem a little bit confused. The Jacobins, since the Fifth French Republic, completely did away with the notion of federation. So when the government of Cameroon conflates federation and a separate state as a distinction without a difference, they mean exactly that. So we should stop confusing ourselves that they see federation and a separate state as some kind of different type of notion. The fact of the matter is that they are not interested. Dictatorships are not interested in ceding even an ounce of power. If you look at this, whatever thing that they've done called decentralization, you will notice there, and Barrister Ashu is probably more qualified than I am, that they've still strung all the decision-making back to the presidency. So it is nothing to do with federalists, confederalists, or whatever it is. This thing is to do with the Jacobins having conquered the concept of federation, which is meaningful autonomy that they are not willing to cede. That's the first observation I like to make. So our people should stop all of this fighting between federalists and separatists. There is no such distinction. That is why when I identify as Ambazonia, my friends are foaming at the mouth. I said, listen, this is what it is, and we should call it what it is. So directly back to your question. Before I answer, Mimi, let me say something to Capo Daniel, and perhaps it's unfortunate that the representatives of the interim government were not here present. I don't believe that this particular problem is going to be resolved through violence. The government of Cameroon can keep trying what they're trying. They will try for 50 years, 100 years. They will not resolve this through violence. That is why WCA has never advocated violence, because there are many situations that you go through violence, kill a lot of people, do all of this destruction, and you still come and sit down and have a discussion as to how you want the matter resolved. The government of Cameroon believes that right now they can conquer the territory that was West Cameroon and therefore impose a conquest settlement. That is what they're trying to do. I don't believe they're going to be successful. And to that end, here's something I'm going to say to Capo Daniel and all the representatives of ADF who are fighters on the ground. Please stop trying to be the dominant force on the ground. You're not going to be able to kill all the other fighters so that you can be the dominant force on the ground. That is hopeless. The government of Cameroon, who is a state actor, has other state actors supporting them. They have tried and they've not been successful. So please stop doing this. And now, Mimi, direct to your question. The idea that is being emblemized as Ambazonia, not necessarily a state, that is an idea that cannot be shot with a gun. And if military force alone was a determining factor, you would think that by now the question between Israel and Palestine would have been resolved. Because Israel is actually, although not admitting in public, they are a nuclear power. So that should tell any person with the most passive observance that military force will not solve this particular problem. And that is because the case for which we are fighting is very simple and straightforward. We accept the result of the plebiscite, which is the position of Her Majesty's government here in the UK. We accepted independence by joining. That is not ideal. That's not what we would have wanted. What remains missing, and Barrister has said this on several shows, the terms of independence by joining are missing. And what we're looking for is that we need to sit down and hammer out those terms. There's no need to kill anybody. There's no need to do all of this stupid fighting. So our people remain resolute. As Capo Daniel said there, those ghost towns are a demonstration of their defiance and the fact that they want their autonomy, that independence by joining, that they our fathers voted for. They want the terms of that clarified. And before coming here, Mimi, I just did a quick research, and the Hansard for 1960 was published. And I just went on and read the contribution by the then Right Honorable Member for Liverpool, Wavertree, who said Northern Cameroon voted to join Nigeria. And that was a simpler case because they got granted that autonomy straight away, at Taraba State or another, Saduana or what used to be Gongola State. And they admitted in that debate that the case of Southern Cameroon was going to be more complicated, and that the terms of that joining, they need to assist us, whether it was with defense, foreign policy, and they feared that the government of Amadou Ahidjo was going to occupy Southern Cameroon. And that is what we see today. So the government of Cameroon knows this, the French government knows this, and they can fight for how many ever centuries they want to fight. Believe you me, I was not taking those who were doing this thing from the 90s, the Right Honorable Barrister from Dinka. When they were doing these things, we thought these were crazy people. But as soon as you take any passive interest on the matter, you realize that the case is actually quite simple. Give us the terms that we got independence by joining, and we can all go home. Those terms don't exist to this day, and that is the problem. And our people know in their bones that they voted to be independent. The form of that independence, they would have preferred to be a completely separate state. We didn't get that. But what we were granted, that is the ask. And I believe that if, as a community, if we phrase the problem like this, we are likely to have state actors coming to our aid whom we are going to need to get this resolved.
Certainly, Mr. Richard Paul would be coming back to the form of the state. What could be the way out in the next, in the minutes ahead. But before we get there, Senior Barrister Ashu Agbor, I want to find out from you. He's talked about in-house fighting, how it's also affecting the revolution that started in 2016, and also delaying the whole the general objective of the people involved in the Amazonian revolution, the entire struggle that you said is going on smoothly. Do you think that all is well on the ground? Do you think that everything is going on as it was normally supposed to be on the ground? What is your own assessment as somebody who's been to the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon, as somebody who is there on ground? What is your own assessment?
Thank you, Mimi. If my memory is still exact, I think I said on Canal 2 International and my Media Prime that it is time for the Anglophones in the diaspora to come together and speak under one cap. It is time for Southern Cameroons back at home here to talk under one cap. This is very important because you see, it provides an answer to the big question of legitimacy. You want to talk for Southern Cameroons. Who has mandated you? If you have many people talking for Southern Cameroons, you don't know who has a mandate and who hasn't. So it is important that we come under one cap so as we can present somebody who can talk for Southern Cameroons.
Are you saying that the diaspora is divided? Are you saying the diaspora is divided and it is affecting the entire revolution and the goal?
I am saying so because when I went on air, many people attacked me that I was fresh from producing the video that CDN aired on social media, and I was not the person who would have said that type of thing. But it is a fact. It is the plain truth. The diaspora is divided, and even here at home, we are divided. You heard Moja, who went out talking, lashing out about against Northwesterners, saying that they had invaded Southwest region, and he had to be called to order by the Prime Minister. Now, you see, at home we are divided. In the diaspora, we are divided. We need to come together. So many international organizations have called on us to come together. Even the United States, I can remember Mr. Tipo Nash also said that we should come together and stop the infighting because it provokes a lack of credibility in what we are doing. If you see how some of our brothers treat others as thieves, rogues, highway bandits. I mean, on social media. Well, you can even look at the comments that are being said here against Mr. Capo. You understand that the infighting is rife. People attack each other. They make it a favorite spot to attack each other in public. I don't think it is correct. We are all fighting for one fatherland. It is the people of Southern Cameroon. Whether we choose to remain with the Republic of Cameroon or we choose to have a separate nation, we are the people of Southern Cameroon. It does not pay us to attack each other. It doesn't pay ADF to attack the fighters of other groups on the field. No, it doesn't pay the others to attack ADF. They should have a united front and stand up as one person. That would increase their credibility and increase their effectiveness. For now, that is not what we are saying.
Now, before I give the floor to Pamela and Bonki, we have reported about atrocities. Mr. Capo Daniel, I'm coming to you. We have reported about atrocities committed on the ground by government forces, the Amazonian fighters, the ADF faction of the Amazonian fighters under Agbor as well. Which brings me to this question, Mr. Capo Daniel. I want to find out from you, is the ADF, because we've had series of instances, as a media, we've also faced a lot of attacks on the part of the fighters who are on the ground and even on the part of the regime of Yaoundé. I want to find out from you, is the ADF fighting against the government of Yaoundé, or it is fighting to control territories in the northwest and the southwest regions of Cameroon? What is your priority?
Our priority is to liberate our territory from Cameroon occupation. But I would just want to make some side comment, react to my fellow panelists before I answer your question, if you may. And I think we are like, when I listen to my two panelists, it's like we are in a vehicle that have lost brakes from Bamenda up station and is running down to crash. And the passengers are there busy arguing about what type of music is going on. Should they play Bikusi or Bottle Dance? So, Senior Barrister Ashu, I think you just got this one completely wrong. As a student, a law student, I can tell you that there is nothing like a legitimacy to represent your homeland. We have the right under international law, the right of organization and the right of association to organize ourselves and represent the interests of our country. And how effective any group represents the interests of that country, it takes the lead. So there is nothing like we must all come and put on one cap. You can go to the struggle against apartheid. You had several factions fighting against apartheid. Nelson Mandela was almost left on his own in jail. But the people of South Africa had one objective, which was to end the apartheid. The people of Southern Cameroon are united to liberate their homeland from Cameroon occupation. We are standing as one people every Monday to demand an end to Cameroon occupation and the complete decolonization of the British Southern Cameroons. There is no division in our objective. We are focused on our mission to liberate our territory. And to go back to the question that Mimimi for asked in terms of are we fighting against our country, and what my panelist said, that are we fighting to dominate and control land? Of course, we want to dominate and control our land. There is nothing shy about that. That is the objective. That is the most effective way to liberate our territory. And we know the Cameroon government have done a very good job in terms of forced flag attacks to try to tarnish the image of the boys that are voluntarily fighting to liberate their country by carrying attacks against our own people, by promoting former fighters and using former fighters and informants to attack our own population with the disguise that these are fighters, attack Amazonian fighters, legitimate fighters. Our fighters are citizen volunteers who are sacrificing and risking their own life for their communities. These are not people who are attacking their own communities. We have thousands and thousands of fighters that are under our direct control, and we do take responsibility for their actions. And where we have excesses, we work so hard to make sure that we protect the population that we are there to serve. There is no instance that you can point to that shows some systemic policy from the Amazonian Defense Forces to attack our people. That would be ridiculous. We are all sacrificing a lot. risking our life daily to liberate our homeland from a regime that is using terrorism tactics on our population, using disinformation and promoting kidnapping for ransom, attacking schools with the hope that they are going to tarnish our reputation and turn the population against the armed conflict, the armed struggle to liberate our homeland. And we
Mr.
expect
Capo Daniel, sorry to interrupt you, because we need to be snappy about this. There's a lot to talk about, and there are so many questions to get through. So you are here telling us that the people on the ground, you're doing everything you can, AGF is doing everything it can to protect the people on the ground. But can you guarantee us, because all the leadership of the ADF are not on the ground, and the people on ground zero are saying that the so-called Ambazonian fighters, or nobody knows what umbrella who falls under anymore, are terrorizing them. And there have been instances or clear situations or incidents where it's become apparent that it has become a fight between different Ambazonia factions for control of territory and of fiefdom. Because I remember you saying that, yes, you're fighting for control of territory. But are you fighting with the army for control of territory, or are you fighting other Ambazonia people for control of territory? Because that was what seems to be coming from the ground. So how can you confidently say that you're doing the work on the ground if neither you nor the head of the AGOFC, Cho Ayaba himself, are not on the ground? How far are you sure that what you're being told is the truth?
The commander-in-chief of the Ambazonia Defense Forces is from the ground. These are people who have been in the battle against the occupation forces, and our trainers are mostly from the diaspora. I myself have been on the ground to engage in activities that I cannot report on your media. We have General Efang, we have General Ebube, we have a lot of generals, top generals who are on the ground. I think you can go back to 1st October celebration of our Independence Day to see how the population came out en masse in areas that we control and display their national colors and celebrate with our soldiers. Even on the New Year's Eve, we have display pictures. You can go to Emmanuel, my Facebook page, and you watch footages of celebration between our people, the Mbororo communities in liberated area. And I can assure you that 80% of our territory have been liberated from Cameroon administration. And in those areas, people are living in peace. Life is going on normally. People are striving. And we have students going on, schools going on in our community school and in some mission schools that also serve our community. Our liberated area is something to emulate. I think you should have to get more information from the governing council and maybe from our pages to really take a window into what is going on and not rely so much on probably information that are not so reliable. I can assure you that those videos are out there, and you should do a better job as a major media platform that have been showing a lot of interest in this conflict to really broadcast the true image of the Ambazonian liberated areas where people are living in peace. We are now in the phase of implementing the transitional authority on the ground. Children now are being issued birth certificates, and marriages are being done under our transitional authority. And our people are very happy, unless we have time to time incursion from the Cameroon military that comes in, kill people randomly, burn down houses. But for the vast majority of 80% of our territory, our communities are living in peace with their sons and daughters that are serving within our military.
But I put it to you again, Capo Daniel, because you keep insisting that our people and territories. What are these territories that you have, saved from the Cameroon military? You're talking about 80%. That's a huge spade of the southwest and the northwest region. But those are not the reports we're getting from the ground. Yes, we are the media. Yes, we try to report as accurately as possible. And these people come to us with a different story. So our stories come from the people on the ground, but that's not what they're telling us. We have children who have been out of school for more than 4 years. We have families too, because most of us also come from those areas, who are fleeing on a daily and have nowhere to stay. And they're having to run to the so-called, for those who prefer the terminology, La République, for safety. So how is it that the same people we're fighting are the same places we're going to seek refuge from if we're that effective?
this is a situation of military occupation. I can assure you that 80% of Cameroon administrators in our territory have been kicked out. You can better tell most of them live in Douala and Yaoundé. Even you can watch from the footages that comes in with them in helicopters and in armored vehicle. They are all bunkered in when they come into our territory or areas that we control. So I can assure you that in our areas, we have registered students, over 25,000 registered students that are going to community school that are directly under the Governing Council Education Board. We also have huge number of students that are going in schools that are from mission schools that adhere to the Ambazonian curriculum, or at least the revolutionary standard that have been set to them. There are always incidents during war where you have people displaced and incidents like that. But those are incidents or conflict in areas that the schools are Cameroon institutions which are not accepted by our revolutionary standard, and we want them out, we want them closed. But we
Mr. Capo Daniel, I want you to tell us with some specificities. You are talking to thousands of people watching this program out there, and we have panelists here who are also experts, who have also had their ears on the ground. We've been reporting, like Pamela said, this crisis from day one, and we continue to talk about what's happening on the ground. When you talk about schools going on, how thousands of children, tens of thousands of children are being enrolled in these schools, can you specifically tell us how it's been done? Who are these teachers? Who is paying them? And how it's been done? Or it's another, it's something that is done in private, or is something that is done in secret? How is that happening? How is that possible?
In public. If I'm surprised that you're not aware. I think
of course we know about community schools, but the figures you're advancing are not accurate, Mr. Capo Daniel. We are aware that they are community schools, but the figures you're advancing are not accurate, because we've got kids who are unable to go to school because of what you know that is happening on the ground. We have areas in ground zero that are not accessible, even to international organizations. Where are these schools taking place? How many of them? Who are paid
you cannot
teachers?
seriously be questioning my numbers because you have students who are out of school. I've said that there are students who are out of school. There is an active war going on. It is a humanitarian
what areas?
crisis.
What areas?
Can you permit me to at least express myself? Lele
But we want facts. We want the schools. We want the numbers in those schools. What areas? What regions? What subdivisions?
You have to give me a chance to talk, and then I will.
By all means, go ahead, Mr. Capo. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the colonial governor of the Savannah states, Lele Afrique, have issued several ultimatum for our community schools to close. If you look at footages that comes out from our National Day celebration, you will see displays of thousands and thousands of students. Your media outlet have to check those things out. I'm surprised you don't have those footages. I haven't seen them on mainstream media. That's why always I cry on my program. I say the revolution is not being televised. You have to please try to reach out for us and find out those footages. You know, the Cameroon government is so aggressive in terms of trying to displace our people. We have seen them issuing ultimatum for our people to leave and go to Nigeria. We have seen them attack communities. And we don't want to give specific names, but I think
I would come back to you, Mr. Capo Daniel, to find out if this is really the scenario that you want for the people of Ambazonia, as you call it. But before we get to that, Mr. Richard, I want you to tell me, is this a realistic scenario he's painting here?
You see, Mimi, one of the things that I find excruciatingly regrettable in this revolution is the fact that we've borrowed all the bad habits from whom we are telling La République de Cameroon, and none of the good habits. We misrepresent things. We say things that should not be, instead of just sticking to the simple truth of the matter. For instance, one thing that La République does very well, they stick together and they have this notion of collective responsibility. Do you believe that the current Prime Minister of Cameroon, Chief Dion Ngute, does not realize that when the head of defense, René Meka, orders villages to be burned down, he does not realize that this is collective punishment and therefore a crime against humanity for which he's one day answerable? But have you ever heard him go on TV one day and condemn any of these acts? But yet, we come, instead of telling our people how it is so that they can make an informed judgment, we make up these statements. For instance, you've just asked Mr. Capo Daniel. He says they've enrolled about 25,000 pupils. Pamela asked him, which area, which region, how did you recruit those teachers? Can you put online these schools so that we can see it? And he then turns and accuses you that you're not doing your job by going to see these schools. And seriously, Capo Daniel, and when you call yourself a governing council, this is the burden you put upon yourself. A government collects taxes because it represents people. When you place the burden of governance upon yourself, it's such a huge burden that I doubt that you've actually sat down and considered what it takes to run a bureaucracy. And this is one of the things that causes people not to take us seriously. You cannot call yourself a government.
I think you are in a Alice Wonderland. You speak what into my mouth.
Can I just say what I'm saying, please?
Spoken, and you are calling about government. I didn't say we are government. We are the governing council. We are in the middle of liberation.
When other panelists are speaking, because I didn't interrupt him. So what I'm saying,
go ahead, Mr. Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, please. When we come on programs like this to inform our people, the first thing that we should do is to be truthful. Because when you give these kinds of pictures to state actors who might support us, they think that everything is okay on the ground. Everything is not okay on the ground. I come from Donga Mantu. There's 33 villages. There are schools happening in 3 villages. Okay? So the situation on the ground, as Pamela is describing, is real. Kids are not going to school. So please don't come here and give an impression. They might be going to school in other areas which you control, but please don't give that impression that things are okay. Things are not okay. And to come back to the point about, please just let me finish when I'm speaking. To come back to the point about, I want you to specifically answer whether the ADF has ever attacked another group of Amazonian fighters who have decided not to cooperate with the ADF. And I've told you, whether it's yourself or any of the other armed groups, this is abject futility. The government of Cameroon is a state actor backed by other state actors with a lot of resources. They have so far not been able to manage to contain all of these boys who started with Dane guns. So what makes you think, as a group trying to fight a bush war, that you'll be able to take control of these other fighters and bring them under your control? What the best you can do is hope that you can cooperate with one another and cover each other's backs whenever you get the chance. So all of this quest about trying to be the largest defense force on the ground, please stop chasing those kinds of things. And as I say, we don't agree with violence because this whole thing, the only value we see the Amber Boys playing on the ground, if nothing else, is to demonstrate to the government of Cameroon that violence will not solve this. And even if they try this for 50 or 100 years, they won't solve it. And as I said, if military prowess was the only determining factor, the question between Israel and Palestine would already have been resolved. The Americans have told the government of Cameroon, as Pamela said earlier on, they're borrowing money to finance a war of choice. So we know how it's going to end. It's not going to end well. So instead of you trying to dominate whatever it is that you're dominating, I would counsel that, please, just stay in your lane, do what you do, and people are going to respect you. And this whole thing about talking about governance, trying to show that you have a curriculum and so on, it just shows that you're being totally unserious. And when you say things like this, it shows that you don't actually appreciate what it takes to run a bureaucracy.
No, Mr. Richard, we'll come back to you, Mr. Capo Daniel. We've heard about in-house fighting from time to time from Mr. Richard and from Barrister Ashu Agbor, who was here earlier. He's also there on board. Because of technical issues, he's on and off. I want to find out from you, are you troubled about this whole issue of in-house fighting, or you are not worried about it at all?
I don't know if it's on now or not. I think this is a common phenomenon in wars. You do not expect the Cameroon government to not play its trick. We are dealing with a country that the Transparency International have classified as number 152 out of 180 in terms of corruption. These are people who know no rules. They are living in the jungle. So they have developed proxy forces and to try to play the role of amber boys and attack other amber boys. We do not. Why would we attack other forces? We collaborate with other forces. We are the biggest force on the ground, and we do not fight to be the bigger force. It's just happening because we are doing our job. So what we experience in the ground is inside attacks, not inside fighting. But the forces have come around and they have come to realize that we have to work together and collaborate. If we have seen some people who have tried to hijack Siseko's organization, try to instigate fighters to attack other fighters, but those fighters have rejected those calls. We have seen footages that come out from Bali with Grandpa Bali, who headed one of those forces, so-called restoration forces representing this splinter group, have come out to denounce such calls from people who have no connection with those forces on the ground. I, as the Deputy Defense Chief, I can assure you that we are focused to fight against the occupation forces of La République du Cameroon, and we are collaborating across the board with all forces. There have been some instances where our forces have been attacked by sister forces that have been manipulated by infiltrators. But those instances are very, very minute, and we are in a war in an area larger than Switzerland. So these are very small.
What about the diaspora leaders?
There are some diaspora. It's not. This is our country. We have children there. We have mothers there. We have fathers. We have children there. There is no difference between the diaspora and those who are at home. And I can assure you that we are all one people. The diaspora had played a huge part in the economy of that country, and we still continue to represent and give a voice to our people and help to organize and to empower our people to liberate themselves so that they can live in a free land. And the thing is that I see my brother there. You talk like, I don't know, you are drinking the Kool-Aid from CRTV, but you are out of touch with reality. On the ground, all the fighters are fighting against a common enemy. There have been instances where you have people like Chris Ano come and call for fighters to attack each other, but those voices have fell on deaf ear.
I would delve on that, Mr. Capo Daniel. Unfortunately, Chris Ano is not here today. I wouldn't want us to talk about it. But if you want me to bring in a counter argument, there were days ago you were also advocating or talking about another fighter on the ground and even talking about his location. And there are also allegations amongst Amazonians that you are not protecting your fighters on the ground because you say you are a defense force, you are a defense official. You are not protecting the fighters who are on the ground. What do you have to say about that?
What specific instances are you talking about? Because you are quite vague. Because if they are not specific, I will be very happy to answer them as a defense official.
I am not being vague. You have talked about the location of some generals in some parts of Africa. You've mentioned their locations. You've talked about it live out there. You've talked about it on your live show.
I can assure you, Mimi, if you have actually produced a video of me giving location of a force on ground zero, I'm going to donate $1,000 to any charity of your choice. I've never done such a thing. I'm a very responsible person and I take my duties very seriously. I serve not just the Amazonian Defense Forces. I have a responsibility to help and assist other forces. The forces in Babanki have basically been on my shoulder. There are hundreds of forces that are sister forces that we do assist them, we do fund them, we do provide for them, and we do help them with political education. I don't know the specific case you want to mention. I would like you to mention it, please, so that I can
there's no in-house fighting. Everything is going on well. There's no in-house fighting.
We have figured that out. There have been some instigation for inside attack. I don't call them inside fighting because we are not fighting back against our own brother forces. There have been some people who have tried to engineer inside attacks against the major force on the ground as to facilitate whatever they are trying to do, but we remain focused, and the forces on the ground have wisened up, and they are speaking out. The grandpa in Bali, who is one of the biggest commander in Bali, who was just a sister force of ours, have come out to denounce those who have been calling for forces to attack other forces. I can assure you, Mimi, I have never asked forces to attack other forces. As a matter of fact, we have been encouraging dialogue and reconciliation among forces. We are focused against an army of La République du Cameroon that is using terrorism tactics on the battlefield and we cannot distract ourselves from attacking each other, let alone giving location of forces on the ground to the enemy. That is ridiculous.
So let's just move on slightly towards a sort of resolution to the conflict. We know what all the problems are and what all the infighting is all about up to this point, who is lying and who isn't. I mean, people are very aware of these things. We can't lie to them. Some are living those experiences right now as we speak.
I challenge you. I challenge you. Bring the tips.
In terms of resolution, what is the ADF doing to ensure that it comes on board to every negotiation table and speak to every party involved in this fight to find a solution with one voice to this Anglophone crisis, or as some would prefer to call it, a war?
We have been directly engaged with the United Nations. Those documents have been declassified by the executive president of the governing council. We have been engaged with the office of the regional representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations in terms of laying our benchmark for a negotiated solution for Cameroon withdrawal from our territory. And that negotiation has been going on for a long time, and it has been declassified. The Cameroon government suddenly withdrew from those talks, claiming to cite some irrelevant activity on the ground. Right now, we are engaging our international partner to see if we can have suitable negotiators to come and try to help the situation. We are having some good feedbacks from countries like Norway. We have had countries like the Americans and several other countries who have shown interest. And we hope to have a negotiated settlement that can be enforced, because we are dealing with one of those countries that do not have any reputation of having some credibility that you can count on. The Cameroon government is a rogue government that have been violating international law with impunity. They have crossed border into Nigeria and kidnapped Ambazonian leaders, and they are taking home no prisoners. So this is a rogue regime with a president that has taken upon himself the responsibility to prosecute a genocidal war using blatant terrorism tactics on the field.
But Capo Daniel, you have not answered my question. I'm asking you what ADF or AGOVC has done to work with all the other parties involved in this crisis to see to it that we have a resolution that is all inclusive and transparent. Now you're giving me examples of what you people as AGOVC have done individually, which we all know cannot resolve this. Yes, you're getting good feedback from Norway, but how is that helping anybody on ground zero? How is that stopping La République or infighting amongst the Ambazonian fighters from going on? How exactly does AGOVC intend to ensure that everyone sits at the same table and makes a decision to bring these to an end? It's not just about one individual, because from everybody's perspective, where we're coming from, none of you actually have any power whatsoever to represent the Cameroon, the Southern Cameroonian Republic. No one has elected you people and given you any mandate to speak on their behalf. But people understand that in a war or in a crisis, you need to be represented by people. So what is it that you people have done to bring everyone together on that same table to speak in one voice as Southern Cameroons that you claim you're fighting for?
I think the premises of your question is just ridiculous. And I want to ask you, who appointed Felix Roland Moemi to represent La République du Cameroon in the United Nations? It's ridiculous. Who appointed Fidel Castro to represent the people who fight for the people of Cuba? When it
but
comes
you're not akin to Fidel Castro. You're not.
Give me a chance. Can you give me a chance?
No. But I can also comment as we go along so that we get the right answers, because you're not akin to Fidel Castro and Cuba. This is not a Cuba situation we're facing here.
This is an Ambazonia situation.
It is an Ambazonia situation, but under very different political circumstances.
Power. And so remember, this struggle have a lot of factions. In a war, you do not fight to get votes. We are doing a hard job.
I'm glad you said that there are a lot of factions, but if you're curious,
let me finish. Let me land. Maybe
go ahead, Mr. Capo.
Along the way.
Go ahead.
When we are fighting to protect our people from genocide and from terrorism tactics being used by the bees, we are fighting with whatever we got. The leading faction just lead by being more effective and more efficient against such a barbaric army. We do not want to become leaders because we are leader, or we want to be leaders because we want to become leaders. No, we are forced into a war we were not prepared to fight.
Mr. Capo Daniel, that doesn't answer the question. The question is, you talked about negotiated settlement.
Who voted you to become the represent the Southern Cameroon?
You talked about negotiated settlement and justice. Mr. Capo Daniel, please. We are understanding you. You talked about negotiated settlement and justice. The question is, how much is Agbor ready to compromise to make sure that there is this negotiated settlement? The compromise in terms of bringing all the factions together to ensure that there is peace in Southern Cameroons.
We have very good working relationship with the IG group of Seseko Ayoktabi, with the consortium, with the Republic of Ambazonia. And we are the leading force. I think we go along with the people that accompany us. And we are very sure of our objective of Ambazonian decolonization and independence. That one is something undisputable. We have a lot that brings us together than the picture you are trying so hard to present. We are working the talk. We are not just here talking. We are working under occupation. This is a very tough job. A lot of countries have gone through war for decolonization or for independence. Look at what the people in Rwanda went through. Look at what the people in Zimbabwe went through when they were fighting for independence. They were overwhelmed by firepower from the BRIC. The people in many other countries have faced the same challenges. It's a tough fight to fight for decolonization and independence. But we are in one because we are forced to, in terms of concession, as you have asked. Nelson Mandela famously said that to give away a human right is to give away a humanity. It is our right to self-determination. It's our right to determine the political outlook of our territory. Also, I want to quote the one that is very, very recent, which is the one from the negotiation and coalition forum, who came out with the figures of over 90%, and the Kadinatumi came out with the figure of over 90% of our people who want absolutely independence. They actually went out of their way, out of the questionnaire, to demand that they want independence. So for goodness sake, we cannot ignore these people in this era of Black Lives Matter. They want independence. They are resilient.
Nobody said no, Mr. Capo Daniel. We certainly want to hear from you concretely what you have as solution. Bringing all the actors on board is very important because the people listening want to also understand. Mr. Richard, you seem like you have something to say. You have the floor.
Look, first of all, maybe before I respond, Capo Daniel, when you come on a platform like this, please treat all of your fellow panelists with respect. Don't use phrases like drinking Kool-Aid from CRTV, because I try to be respectful to people that Mimi invites to this platform. So please
be respectful to the facts.
All right? No, they're not facts.
Respectful to the facts.
Okay, please, gentlemen, let's get back on topic.
Let me just answer the question. Let me just say something, Mimi. All of the clamoring for Swiss talks, dialogue, and all the rest of it, it's a waste of time. And anyone who is now clamoring and begging for Swiss talks, I would say that all of those things are premature. They're premature because you do not negotiate from a position of weakness. Up to now, as we are speaking, I have not even heard the government of Cameroon acknowledge that they're interested in those Swiss talks. For all I care, they're interested in getting that humanitarian organization calling itself the HD to try and get through to some of the fighters on the ground, so that they can either buy them out or kill them to try and neutralize the struggle. And now people are there dancing around, making a heck of a noise that, it's all about the Swiss talks and the Swiss dialogue. The government of Cameroon is not interested in solving this problem. They are interested in a military solution, and if they conquer the territory, they're going to impose a conquest settlement. Until there is sufficient pressure applied to the government of Cameroon that they will want to negotiate, I would say that all the talk about negotiation at this point is wholly premature. And to that extent, I have not seen any group on the ground that has put sufficient pressure on the government of Cameroon to change its calculus. You can talk about making the territory ungovernable. Yes, you've made it ungovernable. You've also made it pretty uninhabitable. And that has just increased the misery of the people on the ground. The people on the ground are resolute. They have had it with the regime in Yaoundé. That is about the most reliable thing that you can say. And that is by observing those ghost towns on Monday. Any other claim, I mean, you have different ways of measuring results. I don't see it. The government of Cameroon can sacrifice all of those bees. They are recruiting 2,000 more. They don't care as long as they remain in power, and you can keep killing yourselves. And in fact,
Capo but Mr. Richard, there's been a lot of pressure on the part of the government. The government has seen a lot of pressure on the part of Amazonian fighters, the international community, but it would appear we have a very adamant government in Cameroon which doesn't listen to pressure, which doesn't listen to calls for ceasefire, which doesn't listen to people. Like you said, there's been a lot of pressure, but nothing is happening. So what is needed at this point?
Not the right pressure, Mimi.
What is the right pressure then? What is the right pressure?
Okay, for instance, we actually don't understand how the international system works. We think that they care about things like human rights, law, and justice. We keep quoting Resolution 1608.
Mr. Capo Daniel, please, some respect, because when you talk, you go uninterrupted. So please,
we think
go
that
ahead, Mr. Richard.
They don't. The international system works on interests. And when their interests are at stake, they bring in those things such as human rights and so on to effect their interest. Right now, what matters to all of the parties that have interest in Cameroon is the stability of that territory and the Gulf of Guinea. So far, the government of Cameroon has delivered that. And as far as they are concerned, there is no further reason to further destabilize the Gulf of Guinea. You can talk about whatever you want until something changes that calculus on the ground and they see that there is a serious risk to their geopolitical and economic interests. Then they will take an interest, and then they will bring in all those other things about human rights and all the other things about 1608 and all the rest of it. But as of now, we actually think that the more Amazonians that they show on social media that they've killed is going to move the needle. It wouldn't. Let me just help you. During Desert Storm, it is reported that almost 750,000 Iraqis got slaughtered. That is the kind of thing that the Western powers and the people who make these decisions, that's the kind of thing, the number that you're going to be thinking before the needle can move. So if you're thinking about pressure that would move the government of Cameroon, it is something that will change the calculus of the stakeholders. And it is always to do with the stability of the Gulf of Guinea. As long as the government of Cameroon is guaranteeing that, nothing will change in the calculus. They'll keep telling you, show some kind of restraint. Look at the number of villages that they've burned down. So what we keep doing is that we keep thinking that fighting in the hinterlands and doing all of the things that we're doing moves the government of Cameroon. It doesn't. So far, for instance, one of the things that Ayabacho Lucas, to his credit, because he seems to have an idea, he said, if you destabilize, or I don't know whether it's him or Eric Tato, one of them, he said, if you destabilize, or if you were able to make sure that you immobilize all of the capitals of West Cameroon, that might cause the government to move, because then the international community can see that there is a serious risk of destabilization that is about to occur. That is when they might be able to step in. We can kill ourselves as much as we want. We can kill the bees. We can kill even all the bees. He will recruit some, get some from Chad, and send them back into the territory. So we need to understand what gets the international community to move, and the kinds of things that we've been doing, going to the United Nations, crying out for Swiss talks. If you are crying out for negotiation, by definition, you're going to get a bad deal. Somebody should be coming to you and say, let's negotiate. And if you look, there is no United Nations as a body. What tends to happen is that state actors bunch together and they sponsor something on your behalf at the United Nations. That is why the government of Cameroon is very comfortable, because they have a permanent sponsor of their interest at the United Nations, and that's La République Française. We have not. In all the 4 years that we've been doing this, we've had not even a single state actor who is prepared to sponsor our bidding at the United Nations. And that is because, as I started by saying, the way we phrased the problem, which was a breaking up of members to the United Nations, put off a lot of potential state actors. Whereas, if we'd gone in for what we are rightly entitled to, and as Capo Daniel mentioned on the Bosch decolonization of what was Southern Cameroon, which was, yes, we do not like it. We accepted independence by joining La République du Cameroun. And yes, the terms of that independence by joining are outstanding. If that is what we're pushing for, we will get into a position where somebody will say, yes, these people have a point. And when you sit down at that point to hammer out those terms, then you can bring in whoever to say whatever they like and separate.
Mr. Richard, we recently saw the Senate resolution just a few hours ago talking about ceasefire and the need for dialogue. They've continually talked about dialogue in among the warring parties in the conflict in Cameroon, but we really don't see that concretely happening. Don't you think the dialogue is the way out? You say Swiss-led talks
the only dialogue, Mimi,
cannot be the solution. What kind of dialogue is needed? What kind of dialogue
is not going to dialogue until there is credible pressure on them? For instance, in the case of Biafra, once a state actor threatens that they're going to recognize that state, it changes the calculus very quickly because one, they can supply you real gear, and two, they can supply you safe passage. We have none of that at this point. And the government of Cameroon had better be careful because you hear the rumblings in Biafra. If whatever Nnamdi Kanu is doing there, it ends up with a nexus building up, there could be real problems. And those are the kinds of things that move world geopolitics, not the kind of thing that we're busy with. To me, it seems like all everybody's interested in this struggle is to try to control ground zero, like it's some kind of video game, when there are people really suffering on the ground, instead of sitting back and thinking, what would cause the government of Cameroon to move and taking steps that will move in that direction? I can guarantee you, we can kill all of those bees that are selling to West Cameroon. We can kill all of our own fighters, sell them and do whatever. As long as the government of Cameroon remains in power, they're not going to negotiate or dialogue.
Pamela.
So, Mr. Richard, your organization, the West Cameroon Association think tank, have done some work in this area. In 2017, you organized a meeting to discuss Southern Cameroon issues in the House of Commons. So moving forward in terms of solutions, you've highlighted some things that we could do to precipitate some pressure on the international scene that would bring a resolution. But in your opinion, what exactly do you think that would bring that turnaround that we need in order to find a likable solution, in order to find a solution that brings peace? Because really what people need or are asking for on ground zero at the moment is peace.
This is true, Pam. And when I attended that CDN dialogue, we spoke to this gentleman who happens to be in those corridors where these things are discussed. Cameroon is currently a strategic partner in the fight on the international war on terror. And so they give them resources. The only limiting thing was that they should not use those resources in fighting against the Southern Cameroon case. And so if we are going to move the needle, we have to start showing that the resources that are being channeled to fight international terror are being diverted to fight the war. And that can begin to put pressure on the regime of Cameroon. For instance, in June, Christine Lagarde, who happens to be French, she's now head to IMF, she gave them a loan of 100 million euros. Ambazonians have been quarreling and fighting over 2 million quid, killing each other, impeaching people, and so on. This is the impression we give. Christine Lagarde just gave them 100 million euros. How are you going to compete against that? So, as Capo Daniel said, I agree with him. We are quite up against it. But that means we have to fight, or we have to think differently. And the little energy that we have, we cannot waste that in fighting one another. And so, if we're going to move forward, the kind of things that we're going to be doing is demonstrating to the international community that the government of Cameroon is embarking on a futile war of choice, which they will not win. I predict that boldly. Even in the next 50 or 100 years, they will not win it. All right? The Americans have told them this. And so the kind of angling that we should be looking at is pointing out to the international community that they are diverting those resources, not to fight the war on international terror, which they should be doing, but in fighting against and killing innocent Southern Cameroonians. That is one of the things that we could be doing. And when we went to the House of Commons, we had side conversations with some of those lords and all of those decision makers. They are very adamant. They recognize the plebiscite. And that is a telegraphing to us that they don't want to relitigate the plebiscite or the UN resolutions. They're not going to be interested, which means you need to find a state actor who sponsors those resolutions for us at the United Nations. And if Britain is against it and puts pressure on all those other state actors, they will yield, because that's what happens in the background. So if we're going to move forward, the first thing that we have to do is go back to the United Nations or whoever and say, the resolutions which you have already passed, make good those, which is, this decolonization was botched, we do not like it, we accept it, but let us see the terms of what it means to be independent by joining. In the process of doing that, many of these things will come out in the wash, including discussions on a separate state. But you cannot get there by doing the kinds of things that we're doing that ends up putting off putative state actors who might actually sponsor some of these resolutions for us at the United Nations. And yes,
Mr. Capo Daniel, thank you so much for that analysis, Mr. Richard. Mr. Capo Daniel, for 4 years, nothing has been done to pressure the government in court, like Mr. Richard says. Not a lot has been done. You need to do more. There's need for more pressure on the national and international scene, which is not what is done, like he said. Does it mean that you fail the people? Is it safe to say that you fail the people?
This is a very tough war for us, and we are faced. This is an existential threat for us as a people. And my brother there, Mr. Richard, I think he represents less than 0.5% of our people, and I speak for the vast majority of our people who wants independence. And of course, we have seen a lot of significant pressure from the international community. The Americans have removed Cameroon from Agbor. The former American ambassador have indicted Mr. Paul Biya for committing extrajudicial killing. The killings of Agbor have had an investigation by the United Nations that have not been released. And this war may be the Waterloo of La République du Cameroon. Of course, we want justice, like Popo said. You cannot ask for peace without justice. Our people deserve and they want justice. We do recognize that our forefathers had voted in the plebiscite to unite with La République du Cameroon, but we also do recognize that the result of the plebiscite were never implemented. Neither was the resolution of the United Nations that permitted the union of both Cameroon. The Cameroon government is a signatory to the constitutive charter of the African Union that clearly says that its borders ends where it had its independence. So Ambazonia, or Southern Cameroon, is not part of La République du Cameroon. We have never been united. And even the constitution or the union that was imposed upon us have been violated. In the 1972 constitution, the Cameroon government seceded from that union that it imposed upon us, and we have declared our independence. We have the damage caused by this war that have been ordered by Mr. Paul Biya is irreparable. Our people do not want to be a part of this union anymore. The result of that plebiscite that was never implemented have been reversed. Demographic have changed. The people want exit. Like my brother who lives in the United Kingdom, the United Kingdom had voted to join the European Union, and the people realized that it wasn't working for them, so they have decided to exercise the right of self-determination to exit the European Union. Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia is a sovereign territory. Sovereignty is a serious matter in international law. This is the founding brick of the United Nations and the African Union. We will call on the Cameroon government to withdraw back to its borders that it attained its independence on the 1st of January 1960 and negotiate its way with Ambazonia. We are not focused on our natural resources. There can be a negotiated solution regarding the resources that they have been exploiting in our territory. They cannot win this war, like my brother have said. The Americans have said it. The Cameroon, even their terrorism tactics that they are deploying on the field, will not win this war for them. Our people are going through tremendous pain. We want this pain to stop.
What is the way out? What is the way out? What is the concrete way out of the crisis?
Just like any country that have fought for independence, independence is a way out. Our country deserves and
how do we get the independence so that they can be just
independent? You are fighting against a stack of odds. You're fighting against, just like apartheid. How did apartheid come to an end? They fought for years. They boycotted school They had pressures mounting up, and eventually it pays off. But what you cannot ask of us is to sacrifice our right of self-determination or our human dignity to live with a country that boldly use acts of terrorism to suppress us and ban our identity. This is not acceptable. We cannot even begin to think to accept or comprehend why would somebody want us not to have our right of self-determination. And we want people to come back to reality. This is the reality. Cameroon present in Ambazonia is illegal. It is not founded on any principle of international law. It violates Cameroon's obligation to the African Union. And we should realize this truth and just talk about it for a moment. How do we solve this illegality? How do we have justice so that we can have peace? Because without justice, there will be no peace. The justice
yes,
for
Mr.
this
Capo,
problem
that's the question we are asking. How do we solve the problem? Concretely, how do we solve the problem? The history is known. The reality is on the ground. The atrocities are being committed. Children cannot go to school. Women, they are the ones suffering more as far as the crisis is concerned. How can we solve the problem? We need concrete solutions. As one of the leaders, you say that you control a lot on ground zero. You control a lot of territories on ground zero. You have been doing a lot on the ground in terms of defense and so on and so forth. Tell us concretely what can be done to solve this crisis. What is the way out?
Let's sit on the negotiation table and let's look at the injustices that was done on our table, on our territory. Let's look at what the people want. 99% of them say that they don't want the union. That is the expression of their right of self-determination. Let us respect that.
How do we sit on the table? Who is? Do you want to take the lead, or who is supposed to take the lead? How should that? How is that supposed to happen? Can you tell us? Can you tell Cameroonians? Can you tell Ambazonians so that they can understand what you're talking about?
Usually, in a situation where you have armed conflict, you have to have the various parties sit down on the negotiation table and talk it out. And usually, the side that represents a territory is usually the leading factions, and the ADF. The Ambazonia Governing Council is the leading factions. I think I can refer you back to the Center for International Security and Cooperation Research Center that have clearly stated that we have been engaged with the United Nations. I personally have been engaged in some of those talks with some organs of the United Nations, and they do recognize that. And that is for the reason why the people who have the rogue leaders that have gone to the Swiss process couldn't succeed. Also, partly because of Cameroon lack of engagement. But I think we have to, for the sake of humanity, let us recognize the reality on the ground. Let us realize recognize that our people needs to get to a situation where we can recognize what they want. You may not even need to have. There have been situations where you have transition that have been guided by the United Nations. You had the United Kingdom, where my brother is coming from. Some of their parliamentarians that we have engaged in, who are our also international partners, have proposed that we should have a period of peacekeeping forces. Where there
is no negotiation, there is no peace if it is Agbor is not leading. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Who is supposed to bring the people to the table? Who is supposed to do that?
It's just like you cannot say that there will be no negotiation with Cameroon if Pobia is not there. Of course,
that is why I asked you, Mr. Capo Daniel, what are you ready to compromise to make sure there is peace? We don't have an answer. Are you ready to what compromise are you ready to make so that there can be peace? We haven't had an answer to that yet. That's why I'm asking.
We want to negotiate. We want to negotiate, and that is our desire.
There's no negotiating without compromise. What can you compromise?
You know how these things work, Anna. You don't negotiate on the social media or on Mimi Smith's platform.
No, we are talking about the way out. We are talking about solutions. You've always talked about even on your platform. We are talking about the way out, Mr. Capo Daniel. We are not negotiating here. This is just a platform which gives voice to everyone.
Yeah, we need a third party that is backed by the international community, like the United Nations, to assure that any negotiated solution will be implemented, and there will be consequences or sticks and carrots if a partner was supposed to walk away from the negotiation table. There is a humanitarian crisis, we need negotiation. We want negotiation. But we cannot do it alone. There are two parties to this conflict. Mr. Pobia have not yet realized that he may end up in jail for crimes as the commander-in-chief of his army, for the terrorism, for the crimes that he has committed. And he has not yet realized that he may end up in jail for crimes as the commander-in-chief of his army, for the terrorism crimes that he has committed. that the bee is committing on our territory. So we want the international community to apply pressure on Mr. Paul Biya to commit to a negotiated solution that will be supervised by a third party. We are ready.
Okay, so let's take this to Mr. Richards, who will give us some comments on what Capo Daniel has said so that we can then round up, because we need to move on to the second half of this, which is looking at decentralization. And obviously, we know that people feel also very strongly about that, but we are still dealing with an Ambazonia situation that is very much connected to La République du Cameroon, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. But we need to be realistic in all our sessions and in how we want to move forward. So, Mr. Richard Ford, I'm sure you have some things to say as a rejoinder to what Mr. Capo Daniel has been saying. Over to you.
Yes, Mr. Richard, before you say it, I want to ask, because you were talking about the need for the people to have what they want. There should be a negotiated settlement. There's need for justice, but for it to happen, there's need for more pressure on the regime. Do you think, I have this question for you, do you think that the US suddenly supporting Morocco against the people of Western Sahara is a pointer that they are moving away from the idea of creating another state in Africa?
Oh, before I answer, let me just respond to some of the things that Capo Daniel said. I really want to take exception to this notion that by asserting what you think you want kind of makes you strong. I want independence, and therefore I'm strong. And he mentioned something about I represent 0.5% of the views of the people. How many I'm not expecting to answer this. How many people do the ADF have listed on their database as those supporting them? These are the kinds of statements that they just generate a lot of angst. And I don't think that anybody is entitled to come and make these statements, because we've never had the opportunity to measure any of these things. And so, to your point, first, Pan, when you're asking what kind of pressure or what can we do to get the government of Cameroon to negotiate? You see, Capo Daniel, you say you want negotiated settlements, and you think that two parties should come and sit at the dialogue table because we have a just cause. I'm sorry to have to disappoint you. It doesn't work like this. There is no reason why the government of Cameroon should negotiate at this point. None. So you can sit there, wish your Swiss stocks, whatever you want. Sufficient pressure has not yet been applied on them to want to talk. And as I said earlier on, wanting to negotiate at this point is premature, because we are going to get a bad deal. You were asked, what are you prepared to compromise? You could not even say. So given that we don't have any real blue chips right now bearing down on the government of Cameroon, I don't think that we are ready to negotiate. And so, to your point, Mimi, quite frankly, I don't really believe that we are in any position right now to start dictating the terms of what happens next. Because as I say, the government of Cameroon, they think that they have time on their side. They're going to grind and grind and grind. I have some, this is not something, as Capo is saying, that I should say on your show, because I'm sure that there are people from Senem watching. But I can make a comfortable prediction that the government of Cameroon will not win this war. And they will sit down and they will negotiate the terms of what it meant independence by joining. And the longer they keep this, the more likely the only prospect that will become, the only choice is a separate state. And you talked about the United Nations and Morocco and the Western Sahara. The United Nations membership is like a club, and none of them, not even H.M. Blighty, the bastion of democracy, they want to entertain the notion of breaking up a member state. The United Kingdom is a very strong confederacy. And with the advent of Brexit, there's this real question that Scotland might threaten to break away. But there's going to be a fight coming on there. So the analogy that Capo Daniel was using there is like, imagine that Britain voted to exit the European Union. It has taken up to the dying hours for us to negotiate a trade agreement with the European Union. The analogy with us is that we voted in the plebiscite, or our parents voted in the plebiscite, to become independent by joining La République du Cameroon. We did not have the kind of Brexit deal that has been negotiated by the United Kingdom. We blundered along for 60 years, and they just told her, oh, well, you know, it is what it is. Let's just move on. Guess what? We cannot just move on, because even Britain knows. But all the cues that they're giving us are that whilst they might not separate the breakup of a member state of United Nations, and they keep referring to this thing of territorial integrity of Cameroon. What nation is Cameroon? Nobody pushes either the Brits or any of those in the international community what they mean by Cameroon, because as Capo Daniel said once again, the constitutive treaty of the Organization of African Unity, which is now the African Union, La République du Cameroon is a signatory. And they sign up to the fact that you maintain your borders as they were when you became independent. And to this date, that has not been altered. So if they go around shouting that Cameroon is one and indivisible, they know very well that it is not. And even right now, as I'm speaking to you, in their last familiar whatever law that they're trying to put together, they define a citizen of Cameroon as somebody who is descended from what used to be La République du Cameroon or British Southern Cameroons. So even right today in their own constitution, they recognize the fact that there are two states. What is missing is the terms of how we shall cohabit or not going forward. And until that is resolved, they've chosen this ridiculous path of thinking that they're going to do it by force. I'm here to tell them who are listening, they will not be successful. And the restoration fighters, or whatever they're going to call them, Ambazonia Defense Forces, and all these brave boys fighting on the ground, they don't have to do anything. They just have to stand their ground for as long as it takes. My goodness me, the Russians went to Afghanistan and butchered the living daylights out of the Mujahideen. They left after 20 years without victory. The Americans are about to pull out. Almighty USA. So the government of Cameroon, they believe that they're going to invent history and world affairs by going into West Cameroon and conquering this territory. They will not be successful. They can keep trying, but they will fail, and they will go bankrupt in the process.
Mr. Richard, how much more is the population supposed to endure in terms of pain, the consequences of the war? How many more people should die before we have the negotiated settlement, the dialogue that is much talked about?
The official position of West Cameroon Association now has always been, when we looked at the data over the last 200 years, fighting dictatorships, using violence is less effective than other means of non-violence. For instance, the one single thing which Capo Daniel mentioned earlier on, the ghost towns on Mondays, have been the clearest symbol of defiance against the authority of Yaoundé. And we needed an alternative authority, not necessarily a government. Because as I mentioned to Capo Daniel earlier on, government comes with a lot of baggage, which you don't really need when you're fighting a revolutionary struggle. And in fact, Foley Hague advised that we should not do this for all kinds of reasons that we should not go into in this conversation. But the price of that the citizens have to pay, I would say, because it's to do with who we are as a people and our identity, we can try and limit the price, but you cannot put a price on defining who one is. I don't see how you can put a price on that. You see, the government of Cameroon is not stupid. The reason why they hired vigilantes, and as Capo is saying, they try to infiltrate the groups and got all of these boys to cause all of this confusion and go and steal the villagers' cattle and their goats and destroy their crops and so on, is to give the impression that this thing is no longer working, we are tired of it, and therefore we don't want it anymore. If you're the government of Cameroon trying to conquer that territory, those are some of the kinds of things that you're going to be engaged in. But our people just need to be informed that, seriously, if those boys on the ground, and that those boys, they've sacrificed absolutely everything. You and I can sit here and talk on some, show on social media, which helps to inform them, but they have sacrificed everything, including the ultimate penalty. And for those, we owe them absolutely everything. On your show the last time, I said that even though I disagree with violence, or the WCA does not agree with violence, I totally empathize with the fact that they've been absolutely pushed to the wall. And it is Mr. Biya who has created the Amber Boys, and he should deal with it. That is why the price is not too high if it's to do with who you are, your identity, and your roots. So if we're going to do something, it's to make sure that our people are well prepared for the long haul, because this thing could take 50 years. So anything that reduces the pain of our people and maintains their resilience and not make them pay with blood is the kind of strategies that we should be looking at to empower our people so that they can get on and sustain this for as long as it takes for us to get a resolution. And from all the indication as I see right now, the government of Cameroon is in no mood to negotiate. All of the things that they're doing, DDR, Swiss talks, all of those things. I mean, what are we, Ambazonia? The Swiss HT, they are a charitable organization that is there to ensure that they can create access routes for them to go and deliver humanitarian aid. They are not equipped to deal with the kind of complex geopolitical things that we're talking about. So to see our people clamoring for these Swiss talks just shows that we've not quite sat down to understand how some of these things work. To his credit,
who should lead the dialogue process?
This is what I'm coming to, Bimi. Ayabacho and Yerima, to their credit, they saw the sham of this and they pulled out because they realized that that was not getting anywhere. The government of Cameroon has never acknowledged that they were engaged in these kinds of things. In fact, the Botch talks that they attempted to engage with Sisiku, at least they came out and denied that, you know, then nothing to see. But I can assure you, the day that we put sufficient pressure, either through trying to get a state actor to do our bidding at the United Nations or by inflicting sufficient pain on the government of Cameroon. And this is where I also give credit to Dr. Ayaba Lucas, because he gets it that if you inflict sufficient economic pain on the regime, that is a pressure point that is likely to cause them to change their calculus. But until I see any of those things happening, buying them guns and killing ourselves or killing a Kelbe or any of those things, I really don't believe that is going to move the needle, because as long as the government is in power and there is no real pressure on them, they will not move.
And the population is suffering, Mr. Capo Daniel. We have a lot of IDPs in the French-speaking part of Cameroon. We have refugees in neighboring Nigeria, and many children, like we said earlier, unable to go to school, young girls bearing the brunt of the conflict, the war that is ongoing in southern Cameroon. Tell us, what are your final words? What are your thoughts about all of this happening to the people that you are defending?
Yeah, the price of freedom is very, very high and it's very painful. It's like the pain of a woman delivering a baby. But all the countries that you see today, the United States of America, they have gone through this pain of fighting for their liberation and their independence from the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom went through the Norman period to have the common law. And the French people had fought for their country to pay the price for their freedom. The people of the southern Cameroon have to fight and make sacrifices so that no generation will ever see the type of oppression and assimilation and terrorism tactics being used upon its people the way this generation have seen it. It pains my heart every time I attend the news and I have videos of children. The other day from Mavas in Akwaya, 4 children less than 9 years old were executed by La République du Cameroun bees, and it is not even reported on the news. And it hurts my heart. And I wonder whether Black lives do matter, but our life do matter for us. Our identity do matter for us. We will hang in there. We will continue to fight. We will arm ourselves to the teeth to make sure we protect our dignity, to make sure that Southern Cameroon is liberated. And to what my brother said there, this may be my last opportunity to talk, I don't know. But I just want to say that Cameroon was never united in the first place. So the war, this is not like the case of Morocco. If the Americans wanted to support Cameroon's to sovereignty of our territory, they would have done it, because our crisis is currently the most neglected in the world. The fact that they didn't do it is a positive indication for us. And we have just seen the United States Senate pass the resolution that call on cessation of violence from the Cameroon government. The Cameroon government will come under increased pressure until they will bow. It will break them as well, because when you see your own children, these are not French people coming to kill our people in Kwakwa, burning our villages. These are our own African brothers. When their population will realize the cost to maintain Ambazonia, that is going to take terrorism, killing Bebe Mata, burning Mami Apia alive, then they will realize, just like the people who have kept slaves, realize that it also takes a part of you to do this thing. Leave Ambazonia alone. We voted to join you, a union that never happened. We have changed the demography. We want to go. Let us go. If you are so interested in our petroleum, let us negotiate about those things. We just want to have our human dignity and have our human rights, basic human rights respected. Our sovereignty should be respected. Southern Cameroon is a sovereign state. It has its territorial integrity. It is not in debate. We have never united with Cameroon. It is not in debate. The African Union laws do say that Cameroon should respect its territorial integrity, and we do preach to respect Cameroon integrity. We are going to be a good neighbor to them, and we are going to be a better partner fighting against terrorism. So they should let Ambazonia go. They should give us our exit. If it is good for the British, it is good for the Southern Cameroonians. We want our independence and nothing else.
I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
I have unmuted myself.
Okay.
Can you not hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So, yes, we've been at this for almost 2 hours. And I mean, we've trashed out all the major issues where the kinks are and what we ought to do in order to arrive at a solution. We've heard the case very clearly from the AGOFC through Capo Daniel's assertion. We've also heard the silent majority voices expressed through Mr. Richard Four, and in the flexibility that is required in approaching this Anglophone crisis, or Southern Cameroon's war, or Ambazonia war, as others would like to qualify it. It is a very complex issue, but we also realize that one important thing that needs to happen for us to move forward is that everybody comes together to find a solution. As much as we want justice before peace, people on ground zero are crying out for peace first, because they are suffering more than anybody else out there. And so, given the casualties that we've suffered thus far, and the fact that there are more than 1 million Southern Cameroonians displaced in places like Nigeria, in Francophone regions, 4 years, children out of school, we're seeing a lot of delinquency setting in. We're seeing the war economy setting in. It is getting worse as the days go by. So it is imperative that the leaders or the different factions in this Anglophone crisis or war come together and speak with one voice and find a solution of moving forward. Put aside egos and sense of importance, and realize that it's about people and not them, and understand that what people have tasked them with, which is not particularly that they voted to task them with that, but that what people have allowed them to do on their behalf requires a sense of responsibility in handling those issues, and requires that they think not of themselves and their pockets or about their positions, and fight for territories. So with that, we thank our guests very much. We thank Capo Daniel. We thank Mr. Richard Four, who's also been working hard to rally the UK House of Commons in order to discuss this issue and take steps on the international community level. And we also thank Mimi Mefor, who made this platform possible for us to have this discussion. And we thank you, our wonderful audience, subscribers, readers, even those of you who do not agree with with some of the ideas or opinions that have been dispensed of on this platform. We thank you for coming on and sharing the differing opinions, because it's important to hear differing opinions, because that is what democracy is. We do not need to all agree, but that doesn't mean that others don't have a right to their opinion if it's different from yours. We're not a dictatorial state. As Anglophones, we always claim that we are open to ideas. So let's be open to ideas and stop the spirit of always attacking people when they have a different opinion from yours. So this is 2021, a year we need to keep things moving. We need to be more objective. We need to look at the ball, at the focus, and do that. So with that, we're going to bring this to a close. And thank you all very much. Enjoy a wonderful week ahead and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to also tell everyone here that feel free to always come. Okay. I just wanted to say that feel free to always come on board. The floor is open. The house is ready to receive you and your point of views. Like Pamela said, we get people across the board, irrespective of what their opinions are, where they belong. We are ready to receive government officials here. We are ready to receive people across all the factions of Ambazonia, Southern Cameroons. Feel free to always tell us when you are ready to come on board. Thank you once more, Pamela.
Thank you, Mimi. And thank you, Mr. Richard, Ashu, and Anna. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And it's goodbye from us. Have a good evening. Bye now.